Thanks, Ariel, for joining me today to share your perspective on the evolution of medical affairs and the impact of the MSL profession.
I'm excited to be here.
Great. Ariel, during the upcoming Medical Science Liaison Society Conference, you're going to be speaking about the past, present, and future of medical affairs and how medical affairs will evolve by 2025. Other than the obvious current pandemic, what has happened over the last 5 years that has set the stage for where we are today?
Yeah, so first, I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait for Las Vegas in just 3 weeks and talking about this more in detail and being there in person. We were there 2 years ago, and it was a ton of fun, and can't wait for it again. Why is this an important subject today? I think a few different, really two big things have changed, and I'm obviously going to talk more in detail about it. Number one is medical affairs turning from a data dissemination engine to a data generation engine for pharma companies. And so historically, medical affairs and medical science liaisons are communicating about this, the therapeutic areas and the trials and the studies that are going on in the industry within that therapeutic area that they work in. That's starting to change into they're now gathering insights, sharing those insights, driving trial design, driving medical strategy, driving and making decisions and becoming that data generation engine for life science companies to drive the business. And that wasn't the case 10 years ago. And that's changing. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that. Number two is over the past 18 months, sales reps were on their couch or going to their offices. And drug sales didn't really drop that much. They dropped, but the different reasons. And so the importance of people are realizing that medical science liaisons and medical affairs has is just growing. So now you see this trend of them becoming medical affairs and MSLs becoming the place that insights are generated for the business. And the importance of it that we've seen over the past 18 months is changing. And these macro trends are going to change everything over the next 5 years. And excited to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned a couple of really important things there, and to unpack that in our brief time today, we won't get an opportunity to do that, but I'm really looking forward to that at the conference. But a couple things that you did mention that I thought maybe you could add a couple more comments to that I think are really important. One of those changes, and you highlighted that has been very obvious with the MSL profession, but I would offer even more broadly to medical affairs over the last several years, and I think is going to continue to evolve, is that the role has become MSLs and more broadly medical affairs have become much more strategic. Why do you think that is? Can you add any context to that?
Yeah, so it has. And because of that strategy, it's the place that the real insights are developed.
Yep.
And I think the first and most important reason is the flexibility and the freedom that MSLs have to develop a peer-to-peer relationship with some of the most important scientists and healthcare professionals in the world. And they could discuss what they want to discuss about the science. And from that discussion leads to really rich and deep insights that drive pharma companies' strategy. Sales reps are restricted from doing so. I'm just thinking about people that are in the field on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
Can only talk on label, certain narrative, certain content, very defined boxes. The MSL and the profession of an MSL is a lot broader mandate, a lot more qualitative. And it enables them to develop these relationships where those insights come from. And the background of an MSL is a pharmacist or a PhD or an MD, to be able to develop that relationship. And only from that trusting relationship can you get those insights. And that's why I think it's really transitioned, and it's going to continue to operate that way. Because doctors want to talk to people that they view as peers. And it's all about developing that peer-to-peer relationship with them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something else, and I know you're going to get into this later at the conference, but certainly during the pandemic, access has become a real challenge for the commercial side. It certainly has impacted MSLs, but we've done global surveys to find prior to pandemic, during pandemic, yes, there's been less time and access per KOL per MSL engagement. But if you're not getting access, obviously you're not getting insights, right? So I think that is another thing that you mentioned that I think is really important, an important portion of and the impact that the MSL has been able to really capitalize during the pandemic. Let's transition a little bit and specifically, how has the COVID-19 pandemic changed or impacted the activities of MSLs or even more broadly medical affairs?
Yeah, so the obvious things are around access. How do we engage? Um, the mechanisms for how you engage with technology versus in person. The time that these healthcare professionals have has been ups and downs depending on the spikes and cases and all these other things. But as we start to normalize to some degree here in the US, at least, and you start to see like what has happened, it's from my perspective, vantage point, it has only highlighted the importance of medical affairs and medical science liaisons. And so the output of the past 2 years, give or take, or 18 months, has been just really clarifying and sharpening the pencil on how important medical affairs is to an organization to understand the ever-changing landscape of medicine. And COVID has accelerated that. And speaking to pharma companies, CEOs, and everything, 10 years ago, medical affairs was not on their radar of one of the more important functions of their business. Today it
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
And you're seeing that in shifts in spend and shifts in headcount, shifts in focus, and COVID accelerated that. It was going to happen, but it's happening faster now because of COVID.
Yep. And I think access has certainly accelerated that, right? The lack of access, commercial versus medical
Exactly.
affairs and MSL specifically. So we've seen that. Um, when we think about, and I've been saying for years, one of my little soapbox, I guess, pitches has always been that the success of an MSL begins and ends at adding value to the KOL relationship. Part of that, certainly, when you think about, and you'd mentioned gathering insights, I think that's an important piece of that, obviously. But the other side of that is having reliable data, right? To be able to actually begin to go in and know about our KOLs and the people we're engaging with. So my question then really is, how important is access to reliable KOL data been during the COVID-19 pandemic and even thinking beyond?
Yeah, it's the backbone. It's the backbone for medical strategies, and it's the backbone for tactical daily decision making. From I'm about to meet with this healthcare professional. What is the latest work that they did? Getting informed that they're going to be speaking at this medical conference virtually or in person, and if it's happening in person, knowing the policy of the health system they work at and if they're allowing visitors. So if an MSL can even go in person now, and having access to that information helps drive all these medical strategies. Even more so around the COVID-19 pandemic, practice changed. People couldn't go to the office. People don't want to go to like their doctor's office. And so understanding how practice is changing, who's transitioning to telemedicine, how that's changing their clinical practice and the clinical guidelines that they're following. So all that, the world turned upside down, and the data turned upside down to help power medical strategies and day-to-day engagements that MSLs need to have with these healthcare professionals. So being at the pulse of all those changes allows you to like operate more effectively, efficiently, target the right doctors and KOLs to engage with, communicate the right medical strategies, understanding what's changing. And so it really enables you to operate as an organization. And we saw this 20 years ago with commercial teams. They hired commercial analytics teams, they hired data scientists. Look at any big pharma company today, they have medical affairs analytics. It was not there 5 years ago. They're
Yeah.
all scaling up these analytics teams because of this transition that we're seeing.
Yeah, because data is empowering, right? And I think to your point, if you're going out and trying to engage with a KOL and learn about their practice, and obviously a lot has changed and evolved as a result of the pandemic, all of that allows you to be certainly more strategic and make more informed decisions and then uncover ways to add value. I mean, I think it's sort of a cyclical process, and I think it's really important. Um, you guys, H1 has a lot of really cool technology that empowers MSLs and medical affairs to engage with KOLs and gather insights and have useful data when going in and preparing for those. So, in thinking about that, um, I'm going to ask you to get out the H1 crystal ball, Ariel, and think about being a bit facetious, of course, but I guess thinking about, okay, we're in the pandemic, we're kind of dealing with that, and getting your crystal ball out. What do you expect to change over the next 5 years for MSLs and again, maybe more broadly for medical affairs?
Yeah, great question. And so what I've seen transition in the industry over the past 5 years and where I see it going, it went from analog, you get an Excel spreadsheet of KOL information, to digital, to where you get a platform, to insights. And now it's going to personalized insights. And so good examples that we experience outside of medical affairs that we all experience in our daily lives is Amazon's personal recommendations for you. Not just what is a good TV, what is the best TV for you, Samuel? And what is the best TV for me, Ariel? And an MSL today has so much that they need to keep up to date with. And they need to curate through everything. And so they could read through insights, but the right personalized insight that an MSL could use is like, this KOL that they're trying to engage with has a open meeting and spends most of its time with this company. And this is the best way for you to engage with them, given the mechanism of action of your phase 2 study. Complete personalized insights to help drive that access and make MSLs even more empowered to drive that access. You're about to meet with this KOL in 1 hour, and you get a notification on your phone with their latest publication that came out 2 days ago. And you know that they're speaking, and you get that notification of the tweet 5 minutes before you meet with them, and they tweeted about this clinical trial, completely personalized to in your life, what you're engaging with. So it's going to completely change. And what that's going to empower is greater access and greater data generation that the medical affairs function is going to have for the pharma company. Medical affairs is going to drive so many things, from trial design to medical strategy, to brand strategy, to commercial strategy, to regulatory strategy, to payer strategy, because they're engaging with the people that are the end users, or the providers out there. And so with more personalized insights, with the greater access to technology, it's going to transform the way life science companies operate because of that, the data that medical science liaisons are going to generate for those businesses.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And if you think about, during the pandemic, H1 and the MSL Society conducted 3 separate surveys with KOLs to understand what that relationship was like with the pandemic. And amongst all the other findings, I think in general, we could clearly identify that KOLs want this, right? They want to engage with MSLs and more broadly medical affairs, and that will certainly drive strategic decisions for pharma companies in the future. Excellent. Ariel, I think my final question here, just kind of going back to the conference. I mean, I agree with you that certainly very exciting to finally be back in person and to actually see live people. So I guess from your perspective, what are you looking forward to most for this year during the conference?
First of all, I can't wait to see everyone in person
Yes.
and how much fun that's going to be. And it's different. It's so different than Zoom. So I just can't wait to see everyone in person. I can't wait to hear some of the talks that people have. I saw the speaker agenda list, and it's super exciting. Just the various topics that are going to be happening, and getting to spend more time with folks and medical science liaisons that are in the field and learning from them. All we do every day here at H1 is listen to MSLs, ask them what they want, and then go and build it. The best way to do so is in person. And so we can't wait to have the opportunity to do that and learn and continue to try and power the industry.
Well said. I'm looking forward to the exact same things. Seeing people in person, getting off of a computer screen, but also just learning how MSLs and medical affairs leaders have actually been successful during the pandemic and have been able to pivot and so successfully continue to add value to the KOLs they're supporting. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So. Really, Ariel, that was it. We just wanted to get together with you and gain some perspective. So I just want to say thanks again for joining me today and sharing your perspective on this very important topic. Really looking forward to seeing you and the H1 team in Las Vegas during the annual MSL Society Conference, December 12th through the 14th. So thanks again, Ariel.
Great. Thanks so much, Samuel. I'll see you soon in Vegas.
Yeah, see you soon.